The hunters moved silently through the dense jungle, their breaths shallow, their eyes scanning every shadow. Sia, leading the group, raised his hand to signal a stop. They had arrived. The hunters had heard that these creatures had gathered here. They were not part of the larger group on Snake Island. They had been terrorizing the community and stealing their livestock. This was their chance to strike, to eliminate a dangerous threat to the community. Sia motioned for his group to fan out, their weapons gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Each hunter moved with the precision of a predator, their movements synchronized as though they were one. Tonight wasn't just another hunt. It was a rite of passage for Tendai. The first hiss shattered the silence, low and menacing, followed by another. From the shadows, the snake people emerged, a family of 4. Their human-like faces bore a strange mix of anger and desperation. Sia's chest tightened. Facing a family was always dangerous. They fought not just for themselves, but for each other, making them relentless. The fight began in an instant. Swords clashed against claws, the air filled with sharp cries and the hiss of scales against the ground. You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. Sia swung his blade, narrowly dodging a strike aimed at his chest. His hunters fought valiantly, their ancestral rage fueling their strength. But the snake people were fierce. They moved as a unit, protecting each other, countering every attack. In the chaos, Sia's eyes caught Tendai. His son was a blur of movement, his blade striking with terrifying precision. This was Tendai's first hunt, but he fought as if he had done this 1,000 times before. Sia's breath hitched as he watched his son battle. There was something unsettling about his strikes. Too perfect, too fierce. It wasn't just skill, it was something deeper, something raw. Tendai let out a primal yell as his blade sliced through the serpent father, its body collapsing to the ground. Blood sprayed across his face, but he didn't flinch. His eyes burned with an intensity that Sia couldn't place. It wasn't just the fire of a hunter, it was something darker. "Tendai!" Sia shouted, rushing to his son as the battle subsided. The other snake people lay defeated, their bodies scattered across the clearing. Tendai stood amidst the carnage, his chest heaving, his blade still dripping with blood. Sia grabbed his son's arm. "Are you all right?" Tendai turned, his face expressionless, except for a faint, unsettling smile. "I'm fine, father." "Why wouldn't I be?" "You fought well," Sia said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But this isn't just about killing, Tendai. It's about protecting our people." Tendai tilted his head slightly, his blood-smeared face half lit by the silver glow of the moon. "And I did protect them, didn't I?" His voice carried an edge, sharp and unyielding. "Yes," Sia admitted, gripping Tendai's shoulder firmly. "But there's more to this fight than rage. We carry our ancestors' strength, but we also carry their wisdom. Remember that." Tendai didn't respond. Instead, his gaze drifted past Sia, to the lifeless body of the snake family's youngest member, a boy no older than Tendai himself. Sia followed his son's line of sight and felt a guilt. Perhaps he should have sat Tendai down and explained who these people were in relation to him. Did he know? Sia wondered. Did he really understand? Before Sia could say something else, a low growl rumbled from the jungle. The hunters spun around, weapons raised, as a figure stepped into the clearing. It was another snake person, but this one was different. It was taller, its dark scales glistening like black glass. Its golden eyes glowed with a sharp light. The creature's voice slithered through the air, calm yet cold.
"You think this is victory?"
it said, its eyes fixed on Sia.
"You've only begun to understand what you've awakened."
The hunters tightened their circle, ready for another fight, but the creature didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head toward Tendai, its gaze piercing.
"The boy,"
it murmured, almost in wonder.
"It's in him."
Tendai frowned, stepping forward. "What are you talking about?" The creature chuckled, the sound low and chilling.
"The curse. It runs through your veins, boy. You may think you're in control now,
Tendai's grip on his sword tightened. "You're lying."
Am I?
The creature replied, its voice like a hiss in the wind.
You've already felt it, haven't you? The rage, the hunger. It's not your own. It belongs to something older, something far more dangerous.
Before anyone could react, the creature vanished into the shadows, its parting words lingering like smoke in the still air. Sia turned to Tendai, his heart pounding. "What did it mean? What have you felt?" Tendai shook his head, but his hands trembled, betraying his composure. "It doesn't matter," he muttered, his voice shaky. "It's gone." But Sia wasn't convinced. Something had shifted tonight. Tendai wasn't the same boy who had entered the jungle. And as the hunters regrouped and began their trek back, Sia couldn't shake the feeling that the battle they had just fought was nothing compared to what lay ahead. The first battle between the hunters and the snake people had been brutal, a clash that shook the very ground beneath them. When the dust settled, the aftermath was a grim portrait of war. Bodies lay motionless, weapons scattered like forgotten relics, and columns of smoke spiraled into the reddening sky. Yet despite the chaos, the hunters had claimed victory. Their triumphant song reverberated through the ravaged streets, a defiant cry of resilience. Though they mourned the loss of their brethren, this victory was not hollow. It was a tribute to the goddess who watched over them, a divine acknowledgement of their bravery. High above in her chambers she stood proud. The hunters had acted swiftly and come to the rescue of the people quickly and efficiently. And at the heart of it all stood Kabo, the fearless leader who had guided them to triumph. Kabo's expression was somber as he surveyed the scene. The weight of leadership bore down on him. Around him his warriors gathered, their faces filled with exhaustion and grief, yet their eyes burned with victory. They looked to him, their trust a silent plea for direction. Kabo's voice cut through the stillness, strong and steady. "Brothers, sisters, you have fought valiantly today. This victory is ours, and it is the first step toward reclaiming our land. But let me be clear, this is only the beginning. The snake people are many and they will not surrender to us. We must take victory as we have done today." The hunters erupted in cheers, their spirits reignited by his words. Their faith in him was unshakable, and for good reason. Kabo had led them through the storm, and they believed he would lead them to the light. "This place," Kabo continued, gesturing to the blood-streaked ruins around them, "will be our stronghold. We will cleanse these streets, fortify our defenses, and make this city ours. From here we will rise. Our mission is not just ours, it is divine. We are destined to reclaim what is rightfully ours and to extinguish the snake people wherever they slither." His tone softened. "But tonight we honor our fallen. We drink to their memory and to our victory. Rest now, for tomorrow we face the greater work that awaits." The hunters raised their weapons and voices in unison, a united force driven by purpose. Kabo knew the battles ahead would test them, but he also knew their faith, both in him and their goddess, was a force no enemy could break. As the hunters moved to tend to their wounded and secure the area, Kabo cast one last glance at the distant horizon. Somewhere beyond the jagged mountains and shadowed valleys, the snake people regrouped, plotting their next move. This was only the first strike in a war that would span centuries, and Kabo was ready to see it through no matter the cost. Hannah knelt beside Daniel, her heart breaking at the sight of him. The young man who sat before her was not the nephew she remembered. He was broken, haunted. His wide eyes darted around the room, as if even the shadows might spring to life and attack. "Aunt Hannah," Daniel's voice cracked. "They're coming." Hannah's stomach churned. She didn't know who they were, but the terror in his voice was unmistakable. He had seen something unspeakable, something that had shattered him. She glanced at her husband Gideon, who stood by the door, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword. His face was grim, his jaw tight. "What happened, Daniel?" Hannah asked gently. "Who's coming?" Daniel shook his head violently, his breath hitching. "The hunters," he managed, his words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "They're not human, Aunt Hannah. They don't stop. They don't feel. They just kill." The words sent a chill racing down her spine. She'd received a letter from her brother Eli saying their brother Cato had fallen by the hands of hunters. She had thought them to be mercenaries. But Daniel's description was different. He wasn't talking about men. "What do you mean they're not human?" Gideon asked, stepping closer. His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge to it. Daniel's gaze flicked to him, his eyes wide and filled with dread. Their eyes, they burn like coals. Their weapons glow, and they can smell fear. They can see through shadows. Hannah felt a cold sweat prickling at the back of her neck. The boy's words were wild, impossible, but the fear in his voice was real. She exchanged a glance with Gideon. Whatever Daniel had seen, it had broken something inside him. Before she could press further, a sharp knock at the door broke the tension. Gideon moved quickly, drawing his sword as he approached the door. He opened it just enough to see who was outside. "My lord, my lady," the guard said, his face pale. "A rider has returned. He brings urgent news." Hannah stood, her heart pounding. They had sent 2 riders to find out what had befallen their kin. "What news?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. The guard hesitated, his gaze flicking toward Daniel. "He says you must come at once, my lady. It's important." She turned back to Daniel, who was staring at the door as if expecting the hunters to burst through at any moment. "Stay here," she told him firmly. "You're safe now." "No," Daniel said, jumping to his feet. His voice was loud, almost a shout. "If it's them I need to see, I need to know." The 3 of them followed the guard down the narrow corridor, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The air grew colder as they approached the courtyard, and Hannah felt a growing sense of dread. When they stepped into the open, her breath caught in her throat. The rider's horse was lathered with sweat, its sides heaving. Beside it was another horse, its burden slumped over the saddle. The figure's clothing was torn and blood-stained, their body limp. "Who is it?" Hannah asked, her voice trembling. The rider dismounted, his face grave. "We found him at the edge of the forest," he said. "He's barely alive." Hannah moved closer, her heart racing. As she approached, the figure groaned softly, their head lifting just enough for her to see their face. Her knees nearly buckled. "Uncle Eli?" Daniel whispered, his voice a mixture of shock and disbelief. The man's eyes fluttered open, bloodshot and filled with pain. He reached out a trembling hand. "Daniel," he croaked. "They're coming. We must prepare." His words were cut off as his body went limp, his hand falling to his side. "Get the healer," Hannah ordered. The stories Daniel had told, the horrors he described, they weren't just the imaginings of a traumatized young man. They were real. The hunters were coming. The forest was eerily quiet as Amina and Kwame ventured deeper into its heart. The towering trees seemed to lean closer with every step, their gnarled branches forming a canopy that blocked out the fading sunlight. The presence of Kwame beside her filled her with an odd sense of security. She had seen his strength when he fought Django, his composure, his speed, his anticipation of Django's next steps. It was all mesmerizing to watch, like a cat playing with its food. Yet, the snake goddess's insistence on bringing him along puzzled her. Why had she said he carried favor with the forest's guardian? Wasn't he an outsider, a man of the city? Amina stole a glance at him, searching his face for answers. He looked calm, but his eyes betrayed a storm within. "Kwame," Amina whispered, "are you sure you've never been here before?" He shook his head. "Never. But something about this place feels familiar." Amina didn't press further. The forest had its way of revealing truths when it was ready. As they approached a small clearing, an electric charge filled the air. Amina's heart quickened. This was the place. She stepped forward, raising her voice to the wind. "Guardian of the forest, I seek your presence." The air stirred violently, swirling leaves and dust into a spiraling column. Out of the chaos stepped a figure, a young woman with an aura so powerful it made Amina's knees weaken. The guardian's eyes, sharp and piercing, settled on her, then flicked to Kwame. A faint smile crossed her lips as though she recognized him. "Queen Amina," the guardian said, her voice filled with authority. You dare settle in my forest without seeking my blessing first? Amina dropped to one knee, her head bowed. Forgive me, Guardian. My mind has been consumed by the hunters who pursue us. I bring my sincerest apologies and a gift. She gestured to Kwame, who stepped forward and placed the homemade beer at the Guardian's feet. The Guardian's gaze lingered on him, her expression unchanged. Your gift is accepted, the Guardian said slowly. But the gods demand more than apologies, Queen Amina. There is a debt to be paid. Amina's chest tightened. What debt? The Guardian's eyes darkened, her voice heavy. Your snakes have disrupted the forest. Their power is great, but it comes at a cost. Trees have fallen, habitats destroyed. The balance must be restored. Amina nodded solemnly. I understand. What must I do? The Guardian stepped closer, her presence almost suffocating. The gods demand balance. To restore it, a sacrifice must be made. Perhaps a life. The choice will not be mine, but it will come. Be prepared. Amina's breath caught. Whose life? The Guardian's gaze moved to Kwame again, lingering. That remains to be seen. The choice will present itself when the time is right. The words hung in the air as they left the clearing, Amina walking ahead, her thoughts heavy. Kwame trailed behind, his mind spinning. He had felt the Guardian's eyes on him, her recognition, her unspoken familiarity. Who is she? He murmured under his breath, but there was no answer, only the rustling of leaves. As they walked, a strange pull drew Kwame to the side. He stopped, his eyes drawn to a cluster of ancient trees. Their twisted roots glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. He stepped closer, compelled by an unseen force. Kwame, Amina called sharply, noticing his distraction. Keep up. But Kwame couldn't move. His feet seemed rooted to the ground. The glow intensified and a deep, resonant voice filled his mind.
You carry a burden greater than you know. The path ahead is not yours to escape.
Later that night, they sat by the fire. Amina stared into the flames, her face set in a mask of thought. Kwame sat silently, his thoughts a whirlwind. Amina had chosen Kwame as her personal guard, an obvious choice considering his level of skill. Queen Amina, he said finally, what if I don't belong here? She looked at him, her expression softening. Do any of us belong where the gods place us? I didn't ask to be queen, but here I am. Kwame sighed. The Guardian. She looked at me like she knew me, like I was part of this somehow. Amina's eyes narrowed. Maybe you are. The snake goddess sent you for a reason, Kwame. She sees what we can't. The snake people hate me. The way they look at me now after the fight. Stop, Amina said firmly. They are angry, yes, but just for a while. They will come around. Patience, Kwame. You must understand their pain and put yourself in their shoes. Only then will you find your place. Kwame wanted to believe her, but doubt lingered. The streets of the city, the camaraderie of the hunters, those were the only places he had ever felt a shred of belonging. But now even those memories felt distant, like a dream fading with the morning light. But could he ever go back? Could he unsee the truths that had been revealed to him? The creatures lurking beneath the city, the beings in the forest, the gods pulling the strings. How could he pretend they didn't exist? As the fire crackled, Kwame stared into the darkness beyond its glow. The forest outside seemed alive, watching, waiting. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Guardian's warning was meant for him. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was clear. He was no longer just a man from the city. He was part of something far greater, something he could neither understand nor escape. Nandi knocked on the sleek metallic door, her reflection distorted in its polished surface. The quiet hum of the base's energy system filled the corridor, a constant reminder of the technological marvel they called home. As the door slid open with a soft hiss, Elder Diallo stood in the doorway, his sharp eyes scanning Nandi. "Nandi," he greeted, his voice low, almost intimate. "Come in." She hesitated, her chest tightening as his gaze lingered on her for a beat too long. Stepping into the room, she felt the air shift between them, heavy with unspoken words. Diallo's quarters were impeccably arranged, as always, everything in its place, the perfect blend of functionality and elegance. "How's Django holding up?" he asked, his tone neutral, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity. She sank into the chair across from his desk, her movements deliberate. "I was hoping to talk to you about that," she said softly. Diallo leaned against the edge of his desk, arms crossed. "There's nothing to discuss, Nandi. The council and the goddess will determine his fate." Her jaw clenched, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "You have sway over the council, Diallo. If you speak up, they'll listen." He tilted his head, his lips curling into a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Why would I do that, Nandi?" She stood, closing the space between them. For a moment, it felt as though the world had shrunk to just the two of them. Her voice dropped, quiet but fierce. "You know him, Diallo. You know me. Django doesn't deserve this." Diallo's expression darkened, and he stepped back, breaking the moment. "Doesn't he? He put himself in this position, and your daughter, well, we both know how that turned out." Nandi flinched as though struck. "This isn't about Django or Nala, it's about the past, isn't it?" "It's about everything," Diallo said, his voice like steel. "Choices have consequences, Nandi, and this is his." "Diallo, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm begging you." "Don't beg, Nandi. It's beneath you." His voice was quieter now, but no less resolute. "Let the system decide." She knew him too well. Once Diallo had made up his mind, there was no changing it. He'd been waiting for this moment, maneuvering toward it for years. The title of Commander of the Hunters wasn't just his ambition, it was his obsession. "Diallo," she began, but he cut her off with a wave of his hand. "This is bigger than you and me, Nandi," he said, pacing now. "The Machinas have been sidelined for too long. Cabo's bloodline has held power for generations, but it's time for change. Elder Machina was one of the greatest leaders in our history. It's time our name rose to prominence again." He stopped, turning to face her. His voice dropped, almost tender now. "You, of all people, should understand that. You're a Machina, Nandi. This is our legacy." Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. "Diallo, Django is my husband." "And you're my sister," he said, the words slicing through the air like a blade. "You should be standing with me, not against me." For a moment, the room felt unnervingly quiet. Nandi could hear the faint hum of the base's systems, the distant murmur of activity in the halls. The weight of Diallo's words pressed down on her, threatening to crush her. "Diallo," she tried again, but he shook his head. "We'll see you at the ceremony," he said, his tone final. "And Nandi, remember where your loyalties should lie." He turned, dismissing her without another word. As she left his quarters, the luxury and precision of the military base felt suffocating. The polished floors, the automated lights, the faint scent of ozone in the air. Everything reminded her of the rigidity and order that ruled their lives. In less than an hour, the ceremony would begin. Her husband's fate, and her family's future, was about to be decided. Django stood before the gathered hunters. His heart thundered in his chest. At the center of it all stood High Priest Mond, his robes shimmering faintly in the light of the sacred torches that lined the walls.
"Django,"
Mond began, his voice reverberating through the chamber.
"Your leadership among the hunters has been called into question. The people have spoken, and now the goddess will decide your fate."
The hunters were silent, their gazes fixed on Django. At the back of the room, Nandi stood beside her daughter, Nala, gripping her hand tightly. Nandi's face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line to keep her emotions in check. She could feel Nala trembling beside her. She willed herself not to cry, but the weight of the moment was suffocating. Monde stepped forward, gesturing to a table where 3 cards lay, their faces hidden beneath the symbols of the goddess. Each card seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive with divine energy.
"There are 3 paths,"
Monde declared, his tone somber and final.
3 fates that lie before you. You must choose." or the goddess will choose for you.
He pointed to the first card.
The divine duel. You will face the chosen champion of the goddess. Should your strength and skill surpass theirs, you will retain your role as leader of the hunters.
He moved to the second card.
The trial by fire. You will step into the circle of eternal flames, where the goddess's sacred fire will judge your soul. If you are pure, you will emerge unharmed. If not, the flames will claim you.
Finally, he gestured to the third card.
The sacred hunt. The goddess will reveal a celestial beast, a creature not of this world. You must track and capture it, but beware. Without her blessing, it will remain invisible to your eyes.
Monde's piercing gaze locked onto Django's.
These trials are not for the faint of heart. If you fail, you will not only lose your leadership, but your place among the Council of Elders. Do you understand?
Django's voice was steady, though every fiber of his being screamed under the pressure. I understand.
Then the trial begins,
Monde declared. Nala couldn't stop herself. He'll choose the duel, won't he? She whispered, her voice desperate. He'll win. He has to. But Nandi didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on Django, her heart breaking with every second that passed. She knew the trials were not designed for fairness or mercy. They were the goddess's way of separating the worthy from the unworthy, and even the strongest could fall. Monde raised his arms and began to chant, his deep voice filling the chamber with sacred words. The hunters watched in tense silence as the cards glimmered faintly under the high priest's invocation. Django approached the table, his eyes scanning the cards. They appeared identical, their faces smooth and unblemished, yet each one carried a fate heavy enough to crush a lesser soul. Monde had carefully shuffled the cards with deliberate precision, each movement a solemn gesture of impartiality. He ensured that no bias tainted the ritual, leaving the outcome entirely to the will of the gods. Nandi clenched her fists so tightly, her knuckles whitened. She could barely breathe as she watched him. Her chest ached, and a silent prayer escaped her lips begging the goddess for mercy. Django hesitated, his hand hovering over the cards. The divine duel promised a fight, something tangible, but he knew the goddess's champion would be no ordinary opponent. The sacred hunt offered the unknown, a test of skill and faith, but the stories of hunters driven mad by its demands echoed in his mind. And then there was the trial by fire, a choice so dire it made his stomach knot. None had survived it. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he reached for a card. His fingers brushed its surface, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Slowly, he turned it over. The hunters gasped in unison, their voices a wave of shock and fear. Nandi's knees nearly buckled, her vision blurring as her worst fears were confirmed. Django stared at the card in his hand, the single word etched into it glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Monde's voice rang out, cold and final.
So be it, trial by fire.
Nandi closed her eyes, her body shaking with silent sobs as Nala screamed into her arms. Django turned, his face solemn as he locked eyes with his wife and daughter. This could be the last time they ever saw each other. Tears threatened to spill, but he held them back, putting on the bravest face he could muster. There was tension in the room, trial by fire. No one who had ever attempted this ritual had come out alive, and there had been only 2 hunters recorded in history to meet this unfortunate fate. My dear tribe members, being the leader of the hunters was a test of strength, courage, and resilience. Many had met their maker trying. Perhaps one day I will tell you the story. Monde stepped forward, his expression grim. The flames await, Django. Prepare yourself. Django nodded, his jaw clenched tight. There was no room for fear now. The path was chosen, and he would face the goddess's judgment with every ounce of courage he could summon. As the hunters parted to make way, Django stepped toward the sacred chamber where the circle of eternal flames awaited. The heat of the torches intensified, the air thick with the scent of burning incense. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he did not falter. Behind him, Nandi watched with tear-filled eyes, her heart screaming silently for him to turn back, to run, to escape. But she knew better. Nandi could feel the scales starting to form on her neck. This always happened when she was distressed or very angry. Diallo glanced at his sister and immediately recognized the signs. He knew what was happening. "Nandi, we need to leave," he said firmly, his voice low but urgent. Nandi turned to him, her eyes narrowing into slits, their shape no longer human but resembling that of a cat, or dare I say a snake. The transformation sent a chill down Diallo's spine, though he had seen it before. With a swiftness that startled even Nala, he pulled Nandi's hood over her head, concealing her face before anyone else could notice. In one fluid motion, he whisked her away from the gathering, careful to avoid drawing attention. There was a secret within the walls of the hunters, one so profound it threatened to divide them irreparably. Few knew it, but the truth lingered in shadows. For it is said that blood does not lie. It keeps a precise and accurate record of the past. And like files buried deep within a forgotten algorithm, hidden truths have a way of resurfacing, no matter how carefully they are concealed. Django's silhouette disappeared into the chamber, and the heavy doors closed behind him with a resounding thud. The flames awaited, and with them, the judgment of a celestial power. And that, my beloved tribe, marks the end of Episode 1, Season 4. I truly hope you enjoyed it as much as I loved creating it. How I've missed you, my dear tribe. A very happy new year to each and every one of you, wherever you are in the world. Want to support the channel and become an even bigger part of our tribe? You can join for as little as the cost of a coffee each month. Your support helps me continue creating the content you love, but of course, just having you here is already more than enough. Thank you for being part of this journey. A heartfelt thank you goes out to these incredible tribe members who generously sent super chats to support the work we do here. Your kindness, dedication, and unwavering support of storytelling mean the world to me. May the gods and goddesses you hold close in your heart bless you abundantly in this year and beyond. A special shout out to the newest member of our tribe. Thank you for officially joining us. Your support touches me deeply, and it's a joy to see our community grow stronger together. If you'd like to join the tribe and be part of this beautiful journey, I warmly invite you to consider becoming a member. Here's to sharing stories, inspiring each other, and growing as one. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.